So I has a brew. Fuck me, that's hot. I also have some Oreos because they were on special in Woolies, and Oreos are amazing. Although they're not as amazing as people think, they're very overrated. Like, Oreos are nice, like bacon is nice, but it's not as good as the internet will have you believe. They're just very, very mediocre biscuits, I think. Custard creams are much better than Oreos, but you can't get custard creams here. And I can't even get Oreo Goldens, which are the pinnacle of Oreos. I'm not overly a fan of, also, the Oreos in Australia are not as good as the Oreos in the UK, because Mondelez has fucked up the recipe because it's made in Indonesia, not the UK. Now, I hope I'm in focus because I'm actually using my 50mm lens a bit further back because it gives me brighter light, it gives me better depth of field, it also blurs the background out way loads now. Because my sofa is closer forwards or further forwards, the wall you can kind of see some details in, so I do need to get something behind me, a nice backdrop that actually is kind of cool and nicer. One thing I wanted to start off with, which I was going to end on, because it's not quite so tech-led, it's based on a tech kind of company, but it's not as relevant as usual, kind of, talk about Microsoft, for instance. And I also didn't want to do this because it's a bit of the Verge lazy journalism, I suppose. If you can call myself a journalist, I suppose technically I am, but anyway, I wanted to talk about Airbnb. Adam Ruins Everything did a really good recap video on why Airbnb is not necessarily good for your city, and I urge you to go and watch it because it's incredibly good. I'll put links in the description below for all that shit. Now, the New York City, I believe New York State as well, has brought in legislation which makes it more difficult for people to run Airbnbs. They've called for legislation to basically not allow you to rent out accommodation for less than 30 days unless you are physically in the building as well. If you're in the apartment, you had a spare room, you could rent a room out, that's all good, but you couldn't rent the entire apartment out if you were away for, let's say, New Year's, for instance. Now, I'm a great believer in Airbnb for the purposes of what Airbnb was originally set up to do. So, for instance, if I owned a property in Sydney, in the CBD in Sydney, and I was away for New Year, Christmas, or whatever period I was away for, I could rent out that place for Airbnb users, say I'm only away for 2 weeks. There's no point me renting it out to another third party or like a tenant like you usually would, because I still need to live in it and use it. But it's gonna be unoccupied for 2 weeks. Hotels are insanely expensive, so why not let me capitalize on the fact that hotels are expensive, the fact that it's going to be empty, and also help people out because it's a sharing kind of thing, which I think is great, and that's the original reason that Airbnb was set up. But what happens is some arsehole business people decide it's a good idea and ruin it for everybody else by buying up a property just for the sole purposes of renting out via Airbnb. Now, that's fine because it gives people really good, cheap accommodation for people to go on holiday with, and undercuts the hotels. But what it does then do is so now me living in Sydney's a great example of this because it happens in Sydney all the time. And so me as someone that's looking to rent a place, I get priced out of the market by Airbnb because people will buy a property for the sole purposes of renting out through Airbnb. They don't live in it most of the time. They just buy a property. They're like property barons would, and because they earn more money than from a normal tenant that pays $400 or $500 a week, they could easily charge someone $100 a night, and if you did that 7 days, that's $700 as opposed to the usual $500 you get from somebody like me. That's why landlords now are increasingly moving to Airbnb, and that's not helpful for the local residents that live there at all. And it puts the price of everything up. We've seen that in London, we've seen it in San Francisco, we've seen it in New York City, we've seen it Sydney here, less so in places like Melbourne, less so in places like Brisbane, because they're not huge populations of people, and not very many people go there. It's usually the key places, huge tourism hotspots that people want to go to. So I agree that if you had let's say you had a log cabin in the middle of some woods, rent it out via Airbnb because most of the year you're not going to be there. So use that. That's fine. That's not a problem. But if you buy a property for the sole purposes of renting it out through Airbnb, you've missed the point of Airbnb and you price out local residents, and people get pissed off with it. And so then what happens is the local state, the local government turns around and says, "Fuck you, Airbnb. You're pricing residents out of this area now, and that means that no one can fucking live here." So I think it's really good that New York City is actually starting to do this now, because it is a piss take. Airbnb doesn't help themselves. Greedy, nasty, horrible property owners don't help themselves either. They don't help the industry at large. And it just means that if I want to use Airbnb in another city, I can't do that because some fucking idiot screwed it over for the rest of us. So what I want Airbnb to do is just basically say, right, if you've got this property, you can't rent it out all year. you're only allowed to rent it out for a maximum of 6 months of that year. And that would probably cut it down majorly. And yes, it's tough shit for people that own holiday homes and not in it for... they're only in it for 2 weeks of a year. But it's like tough shit. That's what happens. You can't buy a property for the purposes of renting out through Airbnb because it prices out local residents who just want to rent a place. And there's no way in fucking hell I'm going to ever be able to own property in any big major city. No chance in hell. I couldn't do it here, not unless I'm on fucking stupid money. I couldn't do it here, can't do it in London, can't do it in San Francisco, can't do it in New York City. Unless I move right out into the suburbs, which is fucking pointless. Rant of the vlog over. Just wanted to kind of impart that onto everybody. I still love Airbnb, I think it's great. But if you have a property that is for the sole purposes of renting it out via Airbnb, I do not like you. Nintendo announced a new console called the Switch. If you haven't heard anything about it, a link's in the description for some Engadget articles and the actual launch trailer from Nintendo. Now, I had a few people ask me whether or not I was actually going to buy this because it was like a huge thing on Twitter. Like everyone was really quite excited about it. I'm not going to bother with the Switch because it doesn't fit what I want to do as a gamer. When I want to game, I want to sit down on a sofa and game on a sofa. I don't really want to necessarily game on the go. And if I did, I have a laptop. If I did, I have a tablet already. I wouldn't need something that has to bridge that gap because I've got enough money. That sounded a bit arrogant, but I've got enough, as an adult now, I've got enough money to go and buy 2 games consoles if I want, to go and get a PC if I want, to go and get maybe a dedicated portable gaming device like a PSP, or just have a decent tablet that I can actually game on. It doesn't make sense to have a device that actually sort of bridges the gap between all of it, unless you just want one platform. If all you can have is one platform, then the Switch is really good. I mean, it's super fucking powerful. I'm very surprised you can actually get that kind of power out of a tablet. I'm going to be very skeptical on how long the battery is going to last. I don't think it's going to last very long. It's got a really nice Tegra processor in there, or at least it will have one of the NVIDIA latest graphics chips in there, which will be superb. But yeah, it doesn't appeal to me as a device. I think it's going to be impressive for Nintendo and possibly for Nintendo games, but really, I'd much rather they have 2 separate platforms, a tablet and a games console. A tablet that you might be able to dock to actually cast your screen, fair enough. But have a dedicated games console that's actually fucking balls to the walls amazing. Same sort of price as the tablet, maybe $300-400. And actually does a really good job. Because Nintendo's never been the ones to do amazing graphics, because that's not what they're all about. They're all about the gaming experience. It's interesting. I think it will do quite well. I think it's a shame they're not releasing it for Christmas. It'll be out during next year, which is a shame. But it'll be quite a good... Well, it'll be interesting to see how many people buy it. I think a lot of people will because it's Nintendo. But I don't know that necessarily it's going to appeal to that many people, because people that want a game on a TV, have an Xbox, have a PlayStation, already have a Wii U or a Wii. Those that also want to do hardcore gaming have a PC. Those that want to game on the go have a Nintendo DS, or they have a PSP, or they have their phone, or they have a tablet, or they have a laptop. So... I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that kind of all pans out. Amazon released a newer and better TV UI for their Amazon Fire Stick, which is fantastic. The Amazon TV interface has always been a bit clunky. It's based on Android. It does work well, but it just sort of feels a bit. I don't know. It just needs a bit of tweaking. I would like them to actually release some new proper hardware that's actually pretty good, because at the moment it's kind of a bit lackluster. It struggles. The menu's kind of like a slow. It feels like one of the early days kind of streaming set-top boxes. We're in the realms of Chromecast now, when Chromecast works effing well. I want Amazon to do well, and I want them to compete really well with something like the Chromecast. I want them to do something that's actually really good. So I want them to upgrade the hardware so that it can actually do things properly, and can actually do 4K would be nice actually in the Fire Stick. You can get the Amazon Fire TV box, but it seems a little bit overkill when we can do 4K at little tiny sticks. I mean, if the Chromecast can do it, yes, it's a little bit bigger than the Amazon Fire Stick, but not that much bigger. So Microsoft released their Q1 financial earnings report, and this was interesting about the Microsoft Surface. So if you've not been following the news, the NFL have been sponsored by Microsoft, and they've all been given the Surface tablets, and they've all crashed and been shit, and there's been huge public backlash and PR nightmares about it. And certainly the experience I've had with Surface has not been great either, through some of the experiences I've had through work, through actually using a device. It's not a great experience. However, Surface sales have skyrocketed. In terms of business users, it's going absolutely amazing. The Surface as a device is fucking impressive. As something you can take on the go, it's really kind of cool. But it's not really, it's kind of like it's a shit laptop and it's a shit tablet. It's the worst of both things. The keyboard's crap for a laptop. It's not you can't use it very well in a tablet kind of environment because Windows is running fully in the background and it's kind of just a bit, It's nice that you can run full Photoshop and video editing and all that other kind of stuff on a tablet, but I wouldn't necessarily want to do that. I'd much rather do that on a desktop with a keyboard and mouse as opposed to do anything like that. But it was interesting to see all this hate about the Microsoft Surface, and it's actually doing fucking well, which is pretty impressive. Tesla announced some news as well. Every single Tesla that's coming out of their factory at the moment has everything it needs to be a self-driving car in its own right. So it has its own onboard cameras, it has some really, really good sensors everywhere, and so maybe in a year's time you can actually walk in, you can actually go into a Tesla and it will be able to self-drive itself without any human interaction at all. So similar to what Uber is doing, similar to what Google is also doing, and similar to a few other smaller players in the market as well. I think it is interesting, the self-driving car market is going to fucking revolutionize so many industries, from out-of-home advertising to mobile advertising to content consumption within a vehicle, to reductions in traffic collisions, to decreased journey times, to increased efficiency, to decreases in greenhouse gases and all that kind of stuff, and just general cheapness of being able to use a vehicle. It's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic. And I welcome self-driving cars. If they could come tomorrow, I would be superbly happy with that. Yes, there'll be a lot of people out of work, but as with everything technological, that always happens. We don't have people that knock on people's windows to wake them up in the morning anymore. That's just what happens. Alarm clocks come along, they get rid of people. And it will be slow, and people still will want to have people to drive them around. Just because I still might want to have to use a chauffeur for a nice black tyre bank, because it's a nice kind of status thing to be able to do. Razer announced a new Blade Pro. Not going to talk about it too much. It's got new processors. It's funkier. It's cool. It's whatever. It's a desktop replacement laptop, kind of, sort of ish. I love the Razer Blade. Like, the Razer Blades look amazing, feel amazing, are fantastic devices, but they're very expensive. They are not very well performing because they're laptops. And yeah, like, I can get something better and cheaper from Dell, or from, actually I think even the MacBook at this point might even be cheaper. I can get the same spec MacBook for cheaper. It doesn't make any sense to go and get one. You may as well just get a desktop and just use that, because yeah, don't game on a laptop. Don't have a laptop as your primary gaming machine. Have a desktop, and the money you saved on buying a desktop that can do the stuff you then spend on a cheap shitty laptop to be able to take with you. There were rumours this week that Disney were going to buy Netflix, and then there was also rumours that Facebook might be buying Netflix, and now nobody fucking knows. It's all rumour mills out of the stock market. I wouldn't worry about it too much, and I really do hope that Netflix remains independent. I do not want it to be bought out by anybody else at all, because I don't want it to happen. I want Netflix to remain independent, so it has the independent buying power to go and get things. I don't want it to be owned by Disney, so that then 21st Century Fox turn around to Disney and say, well, fuck you, we're going to charge you a premium for our films and our TV shows. It's the same with, Warner Brothers Studios turn around to Disney and say, fuck you, we're going to charge you double because it's not Netflix independently now. It's going to bulk up the profits of Disney. I don't want anybody buying it now. I mean, Facebook would be good-ish, I suppose. Google would be a good player, but they're never going to do it. I want it to remain independent. I don't want it to be bought out by anybody, because it's good now, and I don't think it can get any better. And the fact they're starting to clamp down on VPNs pisses me off a bit. Actually, a word on that. I noticed that it happened a while ago. There was a few articles about it, and I thought, oh, that's not too bad. One in tries to use Holler, try to watch some stuff in the US that's not out anywhere fucking where else, because content owners are such fucking cunts. This is why I fucking hate the media industry as a whole. It fucking pisses me off. So I can't get music, videos, games around the world internationally because of some bullshit copyright licensing shit that really is not relevant to anything at all. It doesn't fucking matter. Like, there's a really good artist, 660, in New Zealand, right? You cannot fucking stream their shit on, like, anywhere. You can't even buy the fucking shit. There's a specific song I really, really like. I can't remember what the hell it's called now. They don't stream on Spotify. They don't stream on SoundCloud. I can't get it on fucking Google Play. The only place I can get it is slightly illegally through YouTube, which is not geo-locked. Why the fuck? Because all you're doing as an artist And as a business, it's stopping people buying your shit and getting money from that. Why bother? I just don't understand. Because so if you're Warner Brothers and you, let's say, so Harry Potter's a great example. You don't release Harry Potter to, let's say, China. I don't even know if Harry Potter's out in China. It probably is. But why would you not do that? Just because of some arbitrary licensing shit. It's like you're losing out millions and billions of dollars by not doing that. Why fucking... I just don't understand it. And Netflix, yes, is a streaming service, but it stops people buying that streaming service. If I'm in... That's why I'm thinking about getting HBO, getting HBO, getting things like Showtime, getting things like Hulu, because it's got some really good programs on it that I want to fucking watch. But I can't watch it because it's geo-locked, and then they clamp it down on VPNs. There are ways around it, of course, but it's a fucking pain in the ass. I want this 1980s business model that they're still trying to keep imposing on a globalized world to fucking die of death. Media companies need to just fucking... Well, actually, all the old people just need to die off. When all the 60-year-old bitter old men die off, the world will be so much fucking better. We'll have equal marriage across the world. We won't have famine in stupid fucking places. We won't have so much fucking prejudice in the world. We won't have bullshit like this, which is such a first world problem, I know. But, yeah, this is actually round number... 3, 2, 3, I don't know. I'm in a ranty mood today because I'm tired. Not that teasy, I'm just tired. AT&T is buying Time Warner, confirmed. So that means it gives them access to quite a lot of media space, including Warner Brothers Studios and HBO and a few other things, which is really fucking bad. Time Warner Time Warner is a nasty, horrible company anyway. AT&T is also another nasty, horrible company. Nasty, horrible ISP. It's not going to be good. It's not going to be good. I'll tell you why it's not going to be good. It's going to make, potentially, in terms of net neutrality, so net neutrality is kind of calmed down a little bit, but this gives AT&T a commercial edge to turn around to, let's say, Netflix and say, well, we bought Time Warner, we've got HBO, and we've got this, that, and the other. We've got Warner Brothers Studios. So, because we've got that, we're going to prioritize our customers that are on AT&T and also using HBO and any other Warner Brothers stuff that's come through, and a few of the other bits and pieces that Time Warner has. And we're going to throttle anything that comes through Netflix and throttle everything that comes through YouTube and throttle everything else that comes through Hulu, whatever the hell it is, Showtime, whatever they don't own. And it's not good. It's really not good. It doesn't really give consumers any real benefits. I don't think it's going to be good. Another ISP is buying out Time Warner. It's not. I don't know. It makes me feel nervous when things like that happen. And I know companies make acquisitions all the time, just not this fucking big, because it was 85 billion US dollars. 85 billion. Last thing to really end on, the Apple event is going to happen on October 27th. Like, I'm going to be talking about MacBooks, probably to do with this whole touch show LED kind of shit on the top panel. If you've seen some of the mock-ups and some of the leaks that have been coming out the past 6 months, it'll be interesting. It'll be nothing exciting too much. They'll probably have the new latest processors, probably Kaby Lake, probably some fancy things, some bullshit about it being faster, better, lighter, whatever. I don't suspect it's going to be that much of a big design overhaul. They're not going to release an insanely thin MacBook Pro anytime soon. It would be good for them to actually release devices that are better than they currently are in terms of upgradability, but they're not going to do that probably anytime soon. So they might actually get rid of things like the old Mac charging cable. They might just go down the USB-C route. Don't know. It's all speculation. We'll see on the 27th. I won't be watching it live. I will probably watch it after the fact. Might talk about it a little bit next week, but it's MacBooks. MacBooks are just they're not going to do anything amazingly good that's going to say, oh yeah, it's like no, because computer hardware is computer hardware pretty much. Faster processor, fine. Phones are a bit more exciting. Yeah, so that is basically it. So the AMA happened, and since that, there was a few people wanted me to talk more politics based on my feminist stance, and they were like, oh, you should do like a Thunderfoot kind of thing, and I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to do anything like anybody else has got, because that's pointless, because there was lots of people that were interested in my opinions on things like social justice warriors, things like feminism and Black Lives Matter, and a few like the big encompassing things that all of the slightly right-leaning people talk about and ridicule a little bit. And there's lots of talk, there's been lots of talk for the past couple of years on stuff in universities and safe spaces and that kind of stuff. But as much as I really want to talk about that kind of shit, because it's really interesting to me, I'm basically just adding more white noise to it. This channel is about tech. It's not about politics. I mean, there's some stuff that does overlap, sure, but I don't want this to turn into a political thing. I want it to remain tech. A little bit of politics, sure, but I mean, someone did say about maybe creating a separate channel. It's like, yeah, but then I've got to maintain 2 channels, and then it's hassle, and then it's like, nah. I don't know if I can really be bothered with that shit. Although it would be, I think it would be possibly quite good. It was never the intention to set it up for that anyway. So I don't know. Like, if people hassle me to do it, maybe I might. But it was only really a handful of people that were sort of saying about it and were quite interested in some of my views there, and specifically asked me to do more videos around it. So I don't know. Maybe I do like a week where I just rant about, you know, fucking bullshit like that, about social justice warriors, about special snowflakes and millennials and all that kind of bullshit. I tend not to go down that route because it's really unsafe for me as a content creator. People will not like me. Which is not really the point of this, but at the same time, it's like, well, yeah, but the whole idea of this is to kind of talk about tech, and that's the whole reason people subscribe. I don't want to do this because of views or because of whatever. I mean, I would enjoy doing it, sure, but so I don't know. I watch this space, I suppose, in terms of that. I'm not gonna in the near future. I'm certainly not gonna do it, but maybe in the fullness of time, I might. But yes, I think that's pretty much it. There is no other news really to talk about. There's 2 new videos coming up in the next, hopefully, the couple of weeks, which is about Sydney life, and I'm maybe talking a little bit about what I do in terms of a job, perhaps. Because fucking loads of people have actually always asked me about my job, in terms of what I actually do. And there's loads of stuff I wish I could share, because it's actually pretty fucking cool, but lots I can't because of, NDAs and stuff like that. So, but anyway, apart from that, I shall catch you in a later video.